Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Nature Folklore Sessions. It's 1st of May in 2022. So 1st of May, it means it's May Day. Hello. So much for that. So thank you everyone again for joining me for our weekly time of exploring nature-centered folklore, connecting this from within your favorite sanctuary space and exploring your inspired visions that come from your sanctuary through your poetry, writing, arts, craft, performance, and problem solving. Now today it's part one. It's part one of three-part Bealtaine or Bealtaine series, Bealtaine flowers and frolics is what we're going through today. And there's a lot of wonderful traditions to share with you today. And we have some lovely guests as well. We got Cliff Carr with us, got a song from him. And we got some lovely flower poems from Eileen Monaghan coming up. There's a lot of folklore, and I've noticed on the social media, Facebook and Twitter, there's been a lot of information about the folklore for May Day, for Bealtaine, that I've ever seen before. So probably a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about and going through with you today, you've actually been picking up the last 2 or 3 weeks, maybe, even especially the last 2 or 3 days. So I'm sorry if I'm going to tell you stuff that you've perhaps been reading and talking about, but I've got some personal life experiences and memoirs that are coming into this. So it's probably going to be a full 2 hours because there's a lot of stuff. I trust you'll enjoy it. And I thank you for taking time on this May Day to be part of this program because it is a bank holiday weekend here in Ireland. So it's a day full of traditions. Let's see how it goes. Now, as usual, these Nature Folklore Sessions videos and tree sanctuary support, they're all brought to the generosity of our subscribers through Patreon, PayPal donators, and Buy Me a Coffee. I'll give that link a bit later on. So thank you for your continued support, because without it, I couldn't pay my monthly subscriptions, wouldn't be able to put the show on the air in the way that I do. So let's see which of you lovely early birds are here. I see there's a bit of blinking going on, so someone's here. Let's see who's here. There's Kate here, Kate Cloud Sparks. Happy May Day to you too. And Cliff's here to hear himself, which is lovely. It's a real jolly one we got from Cliff. Good afternoon and May Day blessings. And Terry Slack Hardwick as well. Happy May Day from Mary Rule. And I imagine as I'm saying this, a few more be coming on now. Here we go, another one. And happy May Day from Becky Louise Pennycook, which is fabulous. So thank you for coming on early and spending a bit of your May Day on this. Fantastic. So let's get started. So Bealtaine, Bealtaine, lots of pronunciations, isn't there? And these are the so-called Celtic celebrations for these holidays. And I tend to confuse people by not going all out with Bealtaine reverence on this day, the 1st of May, because to me, it's a May Day. It's May Day indeed. So happy May Day. There we go. You're all saying that, so I'm throwing it back to all of you. And I was brought up with an astrology practicing, boat loving and herb loving family. And they did a lot of their crafts according to reverence to the ancient founded sidereal time. And I got a little bit of a charting. I'm going to be talking about this in future weeks, but they're focused on the cross quarter days. And if you look on the Google for procession of equinoxes, you might understand a bit about the calculations, how that came about. It's fascinating stuff, the procession of equinoxes. And that's the sort of foundation of a lot of ancient astrology. It's how they got started in Babylonian times, the Chaldeans and people like that. And modern astrologists based on that. But it's not just the astrologers, because navigation, there wouldn't have been navigation, sea navigation, without that understanding. And that's been with us up until modern times, when lasers are now used. Anyway, there's plenty of YouTubes, plenty of Google links, and you'll be fascinated by the procession of equinoxes. Anyway, as I say, sea exploration by the ancients was made possible by understanding this. I'm trying to think who were the Babylonians. Well, the Chaldeans certainly brought it forward as Mesopotamia people. Anyway, now, most humans today, they're brought up with the modern calendar doctrine. And this was put together, as I often say on Nature Folklore, by Pope Gregory. He launched it in Sawan 1582. And just for the hell of it, I got a picture of Pope Gregory himself here, just in case you need to know what he looks like. There he is, very happy soul there, isn't he? Anyway, some restored and constructed megalithic sites, they've actually been adjusted. You know, in Ireland, they've got these very ancient sites, 5,000 or 7,000 years old. And some of them have been reconstructed. They've actually reconstructed the positioning to match the Pope Gregory calendar, even though they're ancient. And one of those is actually Carramore, outside of Sligo here. And when they rebuilt this, they aligned it to they aligned it to October, the 31st of October, rather than wait until the sidereal time of Sawan. And this is what they were doing. They're working on it. That's them changing the whole entrance there, rebuilding it. And that's a drone thing of what they ended up with. It's very strange. It's a very strange construction, I think. There's one in a field just across from there that makes more sense, but that's not part of the OBW area. Anyway, enough of my bitching. Using the sidereal time, the point of Bealtaine is that this year is actually Thursday, 5th of May. I forget the time. I think it's the point of it here is 1:25 p.m. Yes, 1:25 p.m. in Ireland and UK. That's the point where there's that cross quarter, the actual point of Bealtaine. But I didn't put it up. I will put it in the links. If you go to a site called Archaeoastronomy, Archaeo as the beginning of archaeology, astronomy, archaeoastronomy.com, and there's table links. Actually, I've got a bit of a picture of their front of their web page. There you go. If you go to there, I hope it's clear enough. It's not clear to me. You might see a link there. It says timetables. And it's kind of at the top, second on the left. That's the one you go to. You go through to that, and it gives you all the dates and times for where you are. Fantastic reference, that is. Anyway, the tradition of pagan people, peasant people, maybe the Wicca people, they like to celebrate the Bealtaine reference, the nearest sunrise to that cross quarter point time. And this year, that's going to be Friday morning, 6th of May. And some like to move this actually to the weekend by observing the Saturday sunset and the Sunday sunrise. And that's actually happening here in Ireland, because the Fire Festival at Ushnick, the center point of Ireland, is actually, there's the drone view. It's actually happening on Saturday, next Saturday, 7th of May. I'm not sure if all the tickets are sold out. It's a huge event. It's a very big social gathering. So that's what they do, because it helps people, I suppose, who work in the week, and they can get together at the weekend. So that's what's happening there. But one challenge with celebrating Bealtaine on the 1st of May is that the hawthorn flowers, they're not out yet. I was looking back on my records, and I think there's only been one 1st of May, or May the 1st, in the last 20 years when the blossoms have actually been out on May the 1st. So here we go. This is how the blossoms are at the moment. They're in buds, ready to go, but we've got to wait a bit longer. So the chances of them being out on the sidereal time date, 5th of May this year, the next Thursday, that's actually quite remote as well. But to me, there isn't any real Bealtaine time, or really any Bealtaine celebration with the traditions I love and familiar with. I don't think, to me, it isn't Bealtaine until those hawthorn blossoms come out, and this is what they kind of look like. If you've forgotten what they look like, there we go. That's taken from the ones that are actually across in the studio from where I'm in today. Yes, I am inside. It's a shame I'm not outside. The funny thing is, very few May the 1st in Ireland actually have great weather. May is usually fantastic for weather. I always say to people, if you come to Ireland, come in May, guaranteed sunshine, absolutely fabulous. Of course, middle of April was really superb here. It was sunny, warm, as the US people say, in the 60s, and then it kind of cooled down from there, and we got the rain in. And it doesn't look like we're going to get the sun back here until middle of May, which is very unusual because usually after May Day we go back into the warm, sunny days again. But yeah, sorry, because I've got some friends over from North America touring around right now, so I hope they don't get too soaked. But we needed the rain; we haven't had it for a while. So we have rain. Oh, the other thing is, I'm going to be talking about the maybush. And the one thing with the maybush, I was kind of not very good and not very quick at putting it together. I have a lovely hawthorn that isn't, it's in leaf, but it isn't in flower yet, and it's in a pot. But it's like with the hawthorn tradition, they have around this time when it comes out, never bring it into a building, never bring it into the home. So I can't. Last other years, I've shown it outside in the middle of the tree labyrinth. So anyway, I got this little posy. I'm going to be talking about posies. That's the best I could do. Let's see if I can show. It's beside me. The lovely thing is, I don't know, there's not much out because the rain has actually made the dandelion heads. Oh, they're coming out now. The dandelion heads are all folded up. I've got some cowslips. The primroses were actually a little bit short stemmed. Goodness, this is very difficult to do because I've got the green screen and the yellow, is with the green screen. I've got this invisible vase of flowers. So excuse me, I've got them. You might see the herby bits. I've got some fennel here. There we go. There's some nice fennel. I've also got some rosemary in here. So nice thing. At least I got a lovely sense while I'm doing this program from you. Very, very relaxing. So that's a bit of tradition. Live on the air. Anyway, the whole month really, because if it's us sticking to the Gregorian calendar, the actual whole month here in Ireland is Bealtaine. It's not just the May the 1st. It's all regarded as that. But in the UK and the USA, you're probably familiar with, because you've got Labor Day coming up in the USA, and around the world it's dedicated to the recognition of human working rights, and that's suddenly friends become comrades, don't they? And there's some pretty harsh cartooning about that. There we go, May Day. There's all the comrades together there, and there's a bit more subtle where the comrades are going around the earth as if it's a maypole, which that's a lovely old one related to the Labor Day. Anyway, but today in Ireland, 1st of May, it's Bealtaine holiday weekend. So there's the convenience of Bealtaine celebrations being hosted and enjoyed now because people have got at least the extended holiday if they're not doing hospitality. So to kick off, I've got Cliff Carr. He's got a May Day song, and as usual, it's flowing with the usual. Who does Cliff Carr sound like today? I'm just going to find his video. I've got this in the collection here. Yeah, so who does Cliff Carr sound like today? I think you'll find with this song, to me, he's sounding like Julian Cope backed by The Cure. So here we are with Cliff Carr with his May Day song. So here we go. Well done, Cliff.
Buttercups and fantasies, we're living dreams, reality. Tiptoe through the lives we lead, stories unfold from the moment we breathe. dreams and nervous laughs, crazy days and crazy nights, pointed cloaks and pointed hats, fairy folk and black cats. A tip of the hat and a wink of the eye, friendly acknowledgement as you walk by. Shake the hand, hug and a smile, heartfelt expressions that says that you're fine. Male gender and cheek display with bells and crackle would be played. Weaving of ribbons, dancing of women, it must be May Day.
Well, there you go. A bit of Cliff Carr there. I hope you enjoyed that, Cliff. If you want the full track of that and everything else that Cliff does, including the stuff we share here on Nature Folklore, anywhere where there's music streamed, he seems to be there, definitely on the YouTube and Spotify, Apple, all the rest of it. Look up Cliff Carr. And there you go. Thank you for that, Cliff. Always a pleasure to have a themed song from you, and it's always very jolly. Right, let's see who's turned up since I was last seeing who's around. It looks like there's a few comments around. Well, Cliff enjoyed that for sure. Brilliant job. Many thanks for this right show. There we go. Fabulous. Let's see what's going on. And Bridget Foy says pies. Oh, yes, gooseberry. I should have looked at the early one. Making gooseberry pie. Brilliant. Well done, Bridget. Oh, boy, I wish that was around here. And many blessings to you, John. Becky Louise was saying that. And Cliff saying there's a blossom where I live, but my hawthorn is still in bud. Yeah, the blackthorn was late. There's still some blackthorn out in some places. It came and went very quickly, the blackthorn here. And it actually blossomed in leaf, which is very unusual. Obviously, the blackthorn blossoms before the leaf. Where we go. Hello from Scotland, from Sharon McNeil, and Mayday blessings from Sharon. Thank you for being with us. And Sherry's with us from the coast of north coast of Maine. Mayday blessings to you too. Fantastic. And Andrea Rosewood from Florida is here. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And blessings to you from Susan Crow. And this looks like an applause for Cliff here from Sharon. Brilliant. And Andrea caught that too. Link to the music, as I say, go to anywhere where there's music. And if there's anything I'm not mentioned about Cliff, I'll put the links in the comments as well. And as I say, go to your favorite streaming music. Lots on YouTube, I know that. And Spotify, Apple. Oh dear, these are you on there and stuff like that. I'm sure you'll find it. And even just do a Google Cliff Carr and you're going to find all sorts of links. I think it's presented very well on the Google. Oh, we got someone from YouTube, as I say. John and Hein here from Amsterdam. Thanks very much, Jane. Thank you for joining. Wonderful. And I hope you'll catch up. And I hope you caught Cliff there, which was a lovely sort of warm up. Anyway, getting back to the business here, getting on to some folklore. The imagery that I'd like to share with you, as I say, is the yellow flowers, because it's very much a time of yellow flowers. The white hawthorn isn't out, so we have the yellow flowers. But because of the rain, as I showed with what I have, the dandelions, there were some dandelions in my little thing. I might have another attempt at showing you again in a moment. As I say, let's throw my head out the way. There we go. That's cowslips. And I've got those in here, which disappear because of the green screen. There we go. Oh, look at that. That's not too bad. There you go. If I put it in front of my sweater, it'll sort of appear. The dandelions have gone all sleepy. They're starting to wake up, and they've got the fennel. Anyway, yellow flowers. It's a Yellow Flowers Day on May Day, and that's why I got yellow flowers behind me. And I think for a lot of people, yellow, especially blooming yellow flowers, is very much a symbolism of the longer daylight of sun. And we've certainly here in Ireland, I think we've just gone into over 16 hours of daylight. So that's fantastic. And I feel the yellow flowers are now a lovely imagery because we're in a warm, supposedly warm transition from spring to summer. But as I say, from here, we had that beautiful 16, 17 degrees and warmth in middle of April. Then we gradually went down. And today, what are we? Well, yesterday we went down to 10 degrees. That's 59. No, that isn't 59. That's 50 degrees. And it's 11. But it's going to creep up. I think in a couple of days, we're going to be back to 16. And that's going into the 60s again, but it's still going to be showery. So we still got a transition from spring to summer. And between this recent new moon and the full moon, there's water from the rain. There's the water pressure going up. So it's going to be a great time for the gardeners trying to get the seeds out. And especially for gardeners getting the plants out, because they're going to get the advantage of that water pressure coming up by the moon and these lovely light showers we're getting. So that's great. So actually, I was going to encore a video clip from me from a couple of years ago talking about yellow flowers, but I've got so much on today. I'm going to actually upload that after the show for the Patreon subscribers. So I'll have that as a separate video. If you've been with me for a while, you might have seen me do this around May Day over the last couple of years. Anyway, I'll update that as well very shortly. And put that up after the show, I hope. What we got going here, there's a few more people joined us. Shannon Michaela, Dory Smith, Bealtaine, New Moon, blessings, thank you. And there's someone else here, I'm trying to get up. A glorious May Day to you, says Ryan. Thank you. And Jane's got something here. The hawthorn's completely out here. Is that the Netherlands? And lovely. I remember dancing the maypole. I can't get a message. There we go. As a child in Australia, was my favorite dance. Well, I will be talking about maypoles a little bit later, and maybe a little extra on that. And there's Maria here. Happy May from Maria. Thank you very much all for joining. But the one thing, yellow flowers, got them behind me. Who doesn't smile when they see yellow flowers? And just to remind you, just in case you haven't got the yellow flowers, there's all kinds of things. There's the primroses and the cowslips, the furze. Furze I don't have in the garden here. They're surprisingly a little way away, so I didn't have a chance to go down and clip some, but they would have been disguised by the green screen anyway. And of course, the lovely dandelions. A lot of them are turning into clock dandelions now. I noticed going outside, most of them are going to seed them and blowing away, but there's no wind. We got a few calm days coming up. And one of my favorites, and it's huge in County Down in May Day, is the marsh marigolds. I love the yellow flower traditions in County Down up in Northern Ireland in the east. They flow through their traditions using them. We used to have marsh marigolds here, but the farmer drained the field and they're not there anymore. So I don't get a chance to pick those up. But yellow happens to be my favorite color. So I'm very biased on the show today. And in Gaelic Scotland, Argyll as it's called today, May Day from probably late medieval times was actually known as Bealtaine, the yellow day of May. So it's very much recognized. And I think probably in Donegal it's very similar because their Gaelic the Gaelic's very similar to the Gaelic of the Hebrides, but other Gaelic areas, Gaeltacht areas of Ireland probably be the same. Now this Gregorian yellow 1st of May, as I was saying, obviously it's when all these yellow flowers are very abundant. So the rituals and observations on this day and all of May, unlike the time of the hawthorn coming out, when the Netherlands got the advantage above us then, if the flowers are out there. So it's not so much based on the human fertility as the old traditions of the hawthorn is, but on prayer and protection, as well as jolly celebrations and market gatherings as well that celebrate the longer and warmer daylight days of summer. Now, it was believed that what happens now largely determines the health of the crops and the reared animals through the summer now, because this is very important seeding and planting time right through from now until the autumn harvest. So all this needs to be highly protected from this point. The soil is warming. And so this is very much an observance of that as well, and a celebration and bringing the entities in to help us along. And our winter survival of food, health and shelter, it all depends on these. And this is what a lot of farmers are looking for. And unfortunately, there's going to be a challenge with that this year, but I'm not going to go into that. I hope it's not a challenge. I hope it's not too bad, but it's something we're concerned about. But I feel that this May Day and the later sidereal time, guided Bealtaine cross-quarter day, it's a beautiful, fun and reverence time. It's my favorite time of the year. And it's a great time to passionately connect us back to the land, our life, and all the season changes. It's very much part of that cycle. And it's my favorite part of the cycle. And I feel it's so important through our modern life, with its priorities of science, digitals, fashion, and trend setting, to understand that all of this status grooming that modern life seems to throw us into, we still have to be rooted in our natural heritage. And as a reminder, we always need to apply at least part of ourselves to restoring and preserving our landscapes. And the traditions and the folklore that we celebrate, and if you get connected to that, to me, those are a motivation for us to do our best to adjust to a much more sustainable future from our actions. But to me, this is as I say, this is my favorite time, and it's very festive time. There's my picture of festive time this time of year. It's great fun, despite my favorite thing being the color yellow. And my mother's name was actually May, but she was born around Lunacy. Anyway, that's a good golden time as well because of the harvest, isn't it? And as I say, there I am. That's the best I could do for a yellow posy that disappears in the back on the green screen. And that's one of the traditions of this time. And you can bring that in, whereas you can't bring the May bush in. But I think the posy is actually a young tradition, possibly from the 19th century, maybe 18th. There was vague local versions since the 16th century of the posy. And I'm going to be talking about that because they weren't called posies. It was another name. So on 1st of May, often there's a morning frost. There wasn't here this year. Most years we seem to have a morning frost, but there was a lot of dew this morning. And even if there's a morning frost, it soon melts into heavy dew immediately at sunrise, immediately at the dawn. As I say, the heavy dew because of the rain is what we had. So I'd like to talk about this in relation to a tradition that seems to be faded out, but is now in great fast revival, and that is the May bush. And before I get into that, because it's a lovely subject, let's see what you're saying. Eileen Monaghan's here. We got poems from her. Nice song from Cliff as well. And there we go. I will be going collecting some small samples later, says Becky as well. So let's get into the May bush here. A lovely visitor and a daughter were here at Carracroy last week, and she told me during a visit that her mother and grandmother, they always performed a May bush tradition on the 1st of May. But they started asking me for it. They said, well, why did we do this? You know, they did it. And they weren't familiar with the reasons they did it. And this is a very simple May bush. There's no yellow flowers on that. I'll talk about the ribbons on that in a moment. But what they did, she said that what was running down through the family, they live in Strokestown, in County Roscommon. And what they did, they got a potted tree or shrub plant. They would cover it with yellow flowers and then leave it on the eve of May Day. And in the morning, go outside and discover that the fairies have left them some sweeties for the 1st of May. So always put it out the night before. Now, one Irish couple in County Wexford, you may be familiar with them, they've been extremely enthusiastic with reviving the Maybush tradition. And I'm talking about Michael Fortune. He's the founder of the excellent folklore.ie website. That's folklore.ie, fabulous website. And that goes into the folklore a lot more than I'm able to do on this Nature Folklore show, as much as I try hard to. But Michael, along with his lovely wife, Eileen, they're very passionate about the interpretation of the Maybush tradition. And they've been performing their own annual Maybush ritual at their County Wexford home for, I suppose, about 20 years at least. And the practice of that has become so popular, and they've had such incredible influence, that now they've set the example, and it's spread out through Wexford, Wicklow. Yeah, they live in Wexford, and it's kind of spread out from them from Wicklow, Wexford, Wicklow, Waterford, Kilkenny, Tipperary, Cork, Kerry, and then going up the west coast, Clare, and it's even crept up all through Connaught there and into Donegal, passing us as well, and into Ulster. But like all traditions, as this tradition received by each county, despite the speed of internet and stuff we have now, whereas tradition used to go by bard and pony a couple of 100 years ago, there's still a lot of local variants. Here's one sort of local variant there. Well, it's a bit like the one before, I know. But I'm going to share some of the variations. I'm going to share what Michael and Eileen do. Plus, I'm going to add what I was brought up with as well as in relation to that tradition. Now, Michael and Eileen's enthusiasm has become so popular, they now have a Wexford Maybush Festival. And that actually lasts on the Friday before the 1st of May. So that would have started, I believe, this Friday, a couple of days ago. And they'll keep going until this coming Friday. Now, the ancient origin of this tradition started when the whitethorn, the other name for hawthorn, when that was blossoming. And that's, I think that's on the Burren, County Clare. But then the church changed all that to make celebrations earlier on the church-enforced Gregorian calendar, which is May the 1st to us now. Now, to substitute the blossoming hawthorn, people started gathering sticks or even grabbing a small plant of hawthorn like I have, or they might grab some gorse, because gorse furze, the furze bushes, they're in bright yellow blooming now. So people grab branches of those if they've got gloves on and place them into a pot, and that's their Maybush. Now, if it was placed in a small pot, which some people used to do, the purpose of that was to dress it up, and that would be carried door to door. And then it'd be a large pot, which is the most common thing now. That's a real dramatic one. That's one of the Wexford ones. That's definitely one of the Michael and Eileen inspired ones. But something like that is put into a fixed point so that the community can gather around it for a shared reverence. Now, some people following the tradition, especially youngsters, they go for a medium-sized pot. And there's some youngsters, they've got their stick there that they pulled from somewhere. And I assume they're going to put that into a medium-sized pot. And then what they do is the pot gets tied to a fence or a gatepost, something like that, or even another larger tree that's outside their home. Now, the downside of the youngsters doing this, as you can imagine, they can be a bit brutal with living trees. They go rushing out. The tradition's what they were sort of shown by the parents, but they can be quite brutal. Oh, that's a nice branch, rip. But adult presence, if possible, when children do that, is recommended at their branch hunting time just before this May Day. Now, the large pot version of this tradition is more for the community, as I say. Now, sorry, I'm actually sharing this on the 1st of May. It was my only opportunity. It'd be ideal if I was talking about this before May, and this is going to happen next year, because the Sunday next year, when I'll be doing this, it'll actually be on the 30th of April, not the 31st of April, it'll be on the 30th of April. So that'll all be ready for you for the... oh, yeah, I'll do that now after the show. So sorry, I'm actually doing this after the effect. But I hope this is still of great interest. But anyway, That lovely May bush, if placed in a community place, that could be by a holy well, by the way, that's popular, or by a statue of a famous person. I think they do that in Ballymalt, which is quite near me. They do something like that by Brother Warford's statue there. Or it could be on the village green, and there's quite a few village greens in Waterford, Wexford, I think even in Wicklow. Or it could be the centre of a local park. Athlone, for instance, I think will probably do that. But on the eve of May Day, this flowerless bush or tree plant, and it sticks, as I showed the children with the sticks, what they do is plant it in the pot and then get decorated with the yellow flowers. But what the children enjoy more than the yellow flowers is actually the ribbons, and they use tinsel. They even bring out the tinsels and ornaments from Christmas and put them on. And the eggshells. Eggshells is another popular, because of the painting of the eggs over Easter. They actually paint sort of the eggshell. So if they have a boiled egg or something, even though it's half an eggshell, they'll paint a little face on it, and they'll put a hole on it if they can. They'll tie that up as well. But what happens next after they've got the May bush, it depends on what the local tradition is. Now, Tracy, who was the one who visited me from Strokestown, she told me of a family tale. They would wake up the following morning and say they would see the fairies have left them sweeties and gifts, just like Santa does at Christmas. But the traditional difference is, with Santa, it's just Santa, isn't it? Santa turns up and they get gifts from Santa. With the May bush, the gifts come from different people, and any local adult family members, also close friends, they will visit their other family people around on the quiet, and they would leave gifts at their May bushes. So it's very much more family involved. It's no secret Santa that comes from the North Pole. Now, there's also an annual tradition of taking the small bush from door to door, just like what the mummers did and wassailers do. And it was a way of begging for offerings, as it was from over 100 years ago, if people were poor and they needed a bit of money, and especially the children, any excuse for a holiday, they'd have some folklore-based reason for going door to door and begging, almost like a protection racket. Whatever they're carrying, give us some money or you'll be cursed if you don't bless our whatever we're carrying. And of course, they're carrying the May bush, and what they're asking for is money in exchange for the blessings from their May bush, which they do keep away from the door, because the fairies are hiding in the May bush, and if they get too close to the door, and this is something they threaten, that if the people are a bit reluctant to give them a gift or some money or something, they'll come closer and closer with the May bush. And the thing is, what the fairies do if they get too close to the door, the story is they go in and they steal your butter. Or your cream if you got it, and they'll sneak back into the tree with your butter and cream. So if you don't want your butter and cream stolen, give the child some money, please. Anyway, the door-to-door version I don't think happens anymore, but when it did, the carrier of the bush had to be a girl or woman who hadn't given birth to a child yet. And that's similar to the Imbolc tradition, isn't it? With the Bridget doll. And that's made or carried by a woman who hasn't given birth. So when they do go around door to door with that, same requirement. Now with this May bush, when blessings are done, the blessings are received, it's actually set on fire. Now, some people get impatient with that. And it's like when I lived in Florida, people would take their Christmas decorations down on Christmas Day, and they'd put their Valentine's stuff up. Anyway, some people get impatient, and they actually set fire to the bush at the midnight on the May Day Eve. And they used to put candles on the May bush anyway, obviously dangerous because it could set itself alight. Anyway, the candles around the bush, if they have any, is what sets it alight. And I've got an emergency coming up. Sorry about this. I'm trying to stop myself going off the air. I don't know what's happening. Excuse me for this. Okay. I think I'm okay. Yeah, I was having a computer malfunction there for a moment, but I think I've resolved it. Okay. Excuse me, I will take a sip. Yeah, we're back on the air. Well, I was just about to be thrown off the air there. Anyway, I was talking about burning. Some people impatient burn their May bush off at midday, but wise people would wait until the evening of the May Day, the next day, to burn their May bush. And after all, it was if it was burned at midnight on the eve, thinking what I've been telling you, where the hell would they put the sweeties? Where the Ferris wheel would put the sweeties? Not wise at all, is it? There'd be no sweeties in the following morning if you burnt your May bush at midnight. So there's also what some people do is they wait till the 2nd of May rather than the May Day evening. And that becomes a communal thing. So if it's like in Wexford and Waterford, where people might have their individual May bushes, they'll all come together and they'll put them all on one pile on the 2nd, and they all got burnt up together. It's just a community reverence, an extra community reverence there. Is there anything else you're saying there? I don't think you got any comments extra there. Yeah, I think we're wise to go on here. So I'll finish off about the May bush. Because it has changed its folklore over the centuries. It used to be about the white hawthorn blossom when it came into bloom. And when it is about the hawthorn blossom, that's all about wooing, lusting, and mating mainly. But I assume the church wanted to dilute and tone down that behavior, that sinful, lusting, mating stuff. And you may have heard of the lusty month of May by Julie Andrews, who used to sing it. And unfortunately, yeah, as I say, I'm messing about and making sure. There we go. There's Julie Andrews there singing the lusty month of May. She's actually, I know from that scene, she's actually lying down and singing it. There you go. However, the May bush tradition became much more focused on calling for things like the protection of milk yield and protection of crops that are about to be sown. And some people actually believe the May bush tradition's absolutely got nothing to do with the hawthorn. I've had a few arguments on that. And whilst I'm saying that, I'm going to change my backing, if you don't mind, since we've had the flowers up. What else can I bring you up? There we go. This I've been talking about. I'll bring fires up in a minute, but I'll use that one for now. There we go. The big basket flowers is nice for a few minutes, isn't it? Anyway, so all that hawthorn stuff is entirely different to celebrating yellow flower sun and the oncoming warmth as we are doing now, even though we might have to wait a bit more time. Well, we're going to get the warmth in a couple of days here, but I don't think we're going to get the sun this time till mid-May. But the hawthorn traditions I'm going to share in about 2 weeks, as I was saying, I couldn't bring in the May bush into the home because you can't do that at all. But if there's gifts left on your May bush, you can bring them in, no problem with that. So let the fairies leave the gift, but never let the May bush come into the home, the May bush into the home. Now, eggshells, I've got something, I think I've got a picture of someone. There we go. There's an eggshell thing that's hanging. That's what they do with a bit of a face on an eggshell that's hung on the May bush. Now, modern version, instead of the eggshells, I'm putting that up again. That's lovely. The eggshells there. Some people actually save the eggshells from Easter to do that, by the way. But the modern version of that, because you get chocolate Easter eggs, is actually to save the wrappers. I haven't got a picture of that. Oops, I got a problem coming on here again. Anyway, I'll try and get them back right. So instead of saving the shells from the eggs that they've been eating on Easter, they save the outer wrapping from the chocolate Easter eggs, the foil, and they hang that on the May bush. Now, some places they decorate their hawthorn tree purposely, and it's either the living hawthorn tree, which I'll talk about in 2 weeks' time, It's planted by a holy well and it's sacred to the community. And I got something on that here that's sort of got lost. That's it. You might be familiar with that. That's actually, I think there's a hawthorn tree, but there's well below that. And that is related. When you go to the clootie trees, the rag trees by the wells, very much related to the maybush I've been talking about. And though people say, oh, it's a very ancient tradition, I actually think this is a development. The way it's done today is the development from the maybush tradition. And I did show you that one of the woman there who's putting that together. So I'll bring that back up again. So even that hawthorn, they might cover it with yellow flowers as well at this time, and other decorating accessories at their tree by the holy well before the hawthorn's own blossoms come out. So they decorate those hawthorn trees by the wells as well. But live hawthorns anywhere. An example is the Hill of Tara. And people come along on May Day. I know there's quite a few this weekend, and they're putting all sorts of things on the fairy trees there. The official one, which died and is now growing up a bit, there's a little bit of action with that. But there are some other hawthorn trees on that sort of outer henge, outside, well outside of Cormac's Court and etc. And there's two trees together that people hang stuff on, thinking that's the fairy tree, but that's what they've made into being the fairy tree. So that gets stuff hung on it as well. And you've probably been amazed by seeing things like tight CD discs and stuff like that put on it. And even local ancient tombs. I think, if my memory serves me, the West Kennet is that Somerset or Wiltshire? Anyway, yes, near Glastonbury, Somerset. I think that's got a hawthorn that people hang stuff on. And of course, those fixed living trees, the natural living trees, they're not pulled up and burned. You won't go up to the well, pull up the hawthorn tree that's decorated with stuff and say, oh, that was a May Day tree, and burn it. That's one big difference with the well trees. So the celebrations and reverences are there for the whole cycle of the year. But if people have put trimmings like yellow flowers and stuff for May Day, especially if it's a local holy well, local village people, they may actually go back. Some of them will go back and they'll collect those offerings that they put on the May tree and they'll take them home and burn them, which is very different to the Brigid's crosses, which are there to be left there until they rot away and release the healing. So it's a different tradition because this is about more reverence for being fed and sheltered, whereas the Imbolc was more about the healing and health of people. Bit of a difference. And schools have adopted May bush traditions, but of course, a lot of the schools have got the church's eyes on them. But the school children, they're invited to bring in the yellow flowers, and I think this is a school photo. They've got the ribbons and all the other paraphernalia, but the way that schools teach them, this is reverence to Mary, of course, and the thanks for her blessing from now on in the late spring and through the summer. So it's it's an extension of Mary blessings. Now, one other country that's revived the Maybush tradition is Newfoundland. And there they use evergreens because they don't have the flowers that we have. And this, well, it's a couple of examples. That one, they decorate it and it's a tall evergreen. It's a pole. It's obviously blown down or a dead evergreen. So they decorate the top. They put it's always like a maypole with a maybush on the top, isn't it? That's one Newfoundland example. But they also have the practical ones, very much like a Christmas tree. That one's only got ribbons on it, but most of them put other stuff. So in Newfoundland, it can be very similar to the Christmas tree. So I tend to wonder how that relates to the Martin Luther-based tradition in Germany. I talk about this in winter, but the Martin Luther tradition seems to have adopted the wassailing blessing of apple trees that goes back into ancient Germanic and Saxon times. But all of this, the belief there with Newfoundland and also with the Christmas tree tradition of Martin Luther time. But the Newfoundland is to wake up life again after the winter. That's the Newfoundland interpretation. Dress the evergreen because their winter goes on a little later than us, and spring will wake up again. That's their belief there. But during these changes, as I say, the apple trees have been replaced by evergreens over in Germany. Anyway, we hang baubles at Christmas, don't we? Which used to be apples. But at Christmas, well, as I say, in Newfoundland, that's for waking up spring. One of the traditions of the Christmas tree that came over from Germany is to wake up the birth of Jesus. But anyway, let's leave that all to winter. I'll dissect a bit what I've just said about the Maybush so far. I'll do a bit of that for a moment, because there's a few more branches of folklore in this. One of the traditional tradition, of course the tradition is traditional, is to wipe your eyes with the morning dew on the 1st of May. And the dew, you pick off the yellow flowers, which is exactly what I did here, especially with the dandelions, who are actually fully out now. But they were covered in water, covered in dew. So you wipe your eyes with that. I'm surprised I've not got brown specks from it. But you do that at dawn, and especially if there's frost on the yellow flowers, then you're really rolling in it. And I'll talk about that in a minute. You're really rolling. So you wipe your face with the dew on May the 1st. And especially yellow flowers that's by our chosen Maybush. If there's yellow flowers that are sprouted up by your Maybush and it's got frosted dew, fairies have made that all possible. And so you wipe your eyes with that dew, with that frost. And do you know what happens? What happens when you do that? You actually see the fairies. And do I have a picture on that? Here we go. There's something about the wiping the eyes. There we go. So it says about Irish women wiping their faces with clear water for the blessings. And here's some gauze, nice fancy. I took that with a macro. That's from the furze, from the gauze. But anyway, you see the fairies, something like that. And of course, they're busy wooing when you see them. So something like that. Anyway, the current traditions of hanging clooties or rags on trees by holy wells, as I say, that's linked to the Maybush traditions. And we know that the clooties and rags, we've put them there to hold them as tokens of wishes, and wishes for health and prayers for health, and even wishes for our own well-being. And a lot of people go to the wells to wish for good crops and good gardening as well. But many say that this tradition at Wales is much older than the Maybush traditions, as I was saying a moment ago. But I think the older tradition at Wales wasn't hanging the ribbons like that and the heavy duty stuff. I think it was just about hanging more natural resources, which when people hang their dollies, their reed dollies, their corn dollies, and their crosses, that would just go back to nature. And this is sort of thing. This was actually, this is a lovely picture from a woman from Japan that came here. And this is what she did around Bridal time. I know that that's probably not sustainable, but she was right into the essence of it, because that's very much what they would do in Japan. But of course, now what happens is you go up to, and then you get all these beads, and there's a lot of beads and stuff. But either way, the intent is for contemplation, prayers, and release of healing. But these are also known as wishing trees. The ones on Tara, they say are fairy trees, but people are putting wishes on those because they're not by wells. And I think that's why people may not be familiar with the yellow flowers hanging from these trees. They're very much familiar. A lot of people are familiar with wishing trees, and also wishing wells, of course. But the hanging of ribbons and rosary beads, that seems to have taken over the old traditions. And I think this has definitely come over. This is what I think's come over from the Maybush. The two traditions have merged. And the Maybush was also a children's tradition. And that seems to have largely faded out now. And as I was saying, the children will put them in a little pot, the covered twigs with yellow flowers, and go door to door with the May bush. And the May bush, as I mentioned, had to be a girl or woman who's had children. But when the children do this, what they're doing, or used to do, and you'll be familiar with the rhyme, but not necessarily the tradition, is they sing, "Here we go gathering nuts in May." And in case you're not familiar with the words of that, here's one variation of that. And that's kind of slanging it up a bit. But here we go gathering nuts in May. But the question is, where on earth are you going to find nuts in May? Where are you going to find nuts in May? What's going on there is actually a mispronunciation. Nut as real should be not. That's the translation. And one interpretation of a knot is what we call a posy today. And there's a woman carrying a knot of wildflowers. We will call that a posy. But the Saxons, Germanic, they used to be, and we translated it over, is a knot. It has a K in it, which is what those people in Germanic people use. They use a K. And a knot's really describing, the knot can describe the bunch of flowers, but what it's really describing is how we're familiar with knot today. It's how the bunch of flowers are tied together. They're tied together with string and a knot. But to make it simple, the whole thing is a knot. And that's the nuts in May. They're knots in May. But then what about the frosty morning and even the dewy morning in that rhyme? Well, as I mentioned, there was a shift. We've had this shift from the hawthorn time, except for the Netherlands, of course. And it's moved it to 1st of May, and there's no white hawthorn blossoms, only the yellow flowers. So that part of the tradition changed to ensure by bringing, by the time we get to the hawthorn blossoming time, we don't usually have frost. Well, not regular frost, but 1st of May, we often have frost. So we can gather our flowers in the frost, and that's what happens. We're gathering our knots in May and putting them together on a cold, frosty morning, because that's usually how May the 1st is. So we get our posy of yellow flowers. We got the frost and the dew on them. We might wipe our face with the posy, but that is actually going to mess up this variation of the tradition. And if there's sun on May Day, on the May the 1st, what happens is you've got the posy of flowers. I'll try bringing this up again. You got this, and if you got the sun on this as you're going door to door, the sun lights what's happened. If I can show you, there you go. There's the dandelion. When I brought the show, that was folded up into a bud. And it opens up, and the sun warms that up, and from those flowers, you're going to get a fragrance come into your face. Now, this is not the sun as the same as the sun warming up the white blossoms of the hawthorn tree, the white blossom tree later. This is very different in tradition, because it's said that the fragrance from the hawthorn flowers, that teases the wombs of women, and it tends them to become lustful. Now, the last thing the church wants is for that to happen from the evil hawthorn blossoms. So again, that's why we have the lusty month of May, thanks to the hawthorn and the sun warming up the hawthorn blossoms. But that's another story for next week and the week after. So maybe that's why Gregory changed the calendar to please the church, because it helped to enforce the earlier date of Bealtaine, so that sinful lustiness would be greatly diluted and our focus would be on other things when we get that fragrance. Now, there's an important point and link of the tradition there, and that's with the, you're probably familiar with this, is the running of cattle through twin flames, through twin fires. Do I have some cattle? Can we have some cattle, please, running through? There we go. I think I've got some. Well, that's a cartoon version. Well, it should be. There you go. There's some sort of druidy man who, of course, he has to have a couple of stones, and he's running the cattle between the twin flames. And there's a massive bonfire at Ushnik that you're familiar with. It's going on, as I talked about, next Saturday. That's a single one. And there's a fire festival around that. Now, there's also stories told of Maeve being the goddess of Bealtaine, and her being a conductor of runners who take some of that fire. There you go. That's a singular fire at Yushnik. And the story is there that when that fire is died down at Yushnik, that Maeve instructs some runners to take embers from that fire all over Ireland to share. I think that's getting messed up with the Sawan tradition from Tara, and also from Tara, and from the Hill Award as well, from there as well. So I think that's where tradition is sort of cross borders. Anyway, to me, a fire festival is only half the translation of this Bealtaine. Fires alone do not seem to make sense. You know, people say it's a Bealtaine, it's a fire festival. I think it's only half the story, especially for me. To me, what this is a celebration of is that warmth, the sun, the warmth, and the fire is of the sun, because recent translations, all thanks to a lot to the Wicca, I think, Wicca people, they bring in this god or goddess Baal into Beal, which in a translation, has a relationship to heat. You know, it's from the time when words were about conditions. Baal is a thing, it's a person. But the condition is of extreme heat. It's time of hot heat. And tin, there's all sorts of translations over there for what that is. But if you go back in ancient times, certainly from students of early languages, tin means of something that's very hard. And it's very much a rod. It's talking about a very hard rod. You can make hard rods. You can perhaps smith things from the Bealtaine fire. But also the holly. I'll talk about that another time. Holly being such a hard wood, that's tin holly and ogham. And the reason being is that they're so hard it can be used for chariot axles. That's why it's tin. It's not talking. Tin isn't the word for holly. It's to do with the heart. Anyway, I'm drifting away here. But really, one thing saying this is a celebration of warmth, warming up not only the dew and the frost, but it warms up the soil. And then you need the warm soil in order to plant the seeds and put your plants in. And fortunately now, we've just had the new moon. We're coming up to the full moon. We've got the pressure, the moon is pulling up the pressure of the water up. We've got these showery days. There's still going to be warmth. We've got warmer days coming up. So all of this is warming up the soil. Great time to put in the seeds. Excellent. It's going to be fantastic this year. Seeds and plants going in, and especially for the cereals, which need to be planted now, ready to be harvested at Lunasa. So this is all a celebration and blessing. Please make this work. So that's what, to me, that's all it. That's what this is about. Fire. It's not just about fire. It's about fire on water. That's my translation anyway. So the sun warming the cold water above the ground and below the ground. And that's what's being celebrated. I got a bit of a diagram on that. There you go. That's what's happening. If you can have a bit of concentration on that. And when we go into the science, that's what we're revering right now. But then here we go. Right. How am I there?
Right. How am I there?
Right. Am I?
Right. Am I there?
Now get rid of the noise. Right. Ah, oh, come on. Right, there we go. Let's see if I got anything. Can you actually hear me here? One, two. See. Right. I'm back, am I? Okay, I'll explain myself in a minute. Let's get, I just got to sort out settings here. I don't know what happened there. Yeah, I've got the camera. Let's make sure the audio is correct. It's 1, 2, yeah, I'm all back. I don't know what happened there. I was getting warnings for a few minutes, as I was saying to you. So sorry this was broken up. And I hope some of you will get back to it. I don't know how much you missed. I had to reboot the entire computer and plug everything back in. So that's why it took a few minutes. So I wonder, how much did you actually catch? Can you actually, yes, 3, 4, thank you, Cliff. Sound, you're playing tunes. Yeah, there was all kinds of stuff going on there. So how much, I wonder, did you actually hear? What was we going on about? What was the last thing you hear me talking about? Did you hear me talking about Maeve? Those of you who are still with me, and her runners and the massive bonfire. Did we get to that? Can someone tell me how much what they saw? I want to see how far I need to go back. Anyone? Any volunteers? Anyone out there who can actually tell me? Right, May and fires. Yes, Cliff and did you Maeve? Can someone tell me? Did you hear me talking about Maeve? Did I get to that? Anyway, I'll nobody's answering, so I'll just I will. The big fire. Someone said that. Let's start with the big. Let's go back to the big fire again. So let's see if I can find my big fire picture, and we'll do that. I'll start that. And as I say, I was talking about that as my belief in the changes of water. Right, and the Maeve, yeah, the Catalan fires. We talked about that. Ushnik, the big fire, and the heating of the water there. So the Fire Festival, as I say, I think is only half the translation I was talking about. It's about fire warming up the land, and what happens, morning frost and dew gets the sun on it, and so there's heating above and below land, and that's so important for us at this time with the planting and sowing that's going on to make sure we have a successful lunasa, and the trees love it and the plants love it, all that's going on. And this is what's being celebrated at this time. And you said that you saw the big fire, because I want to go into pollination as well. And we had new moon a couple of days ago, which was lovely. And that's the best time to sow seeds for the summer crops, especially cereals, barley, rye, oats, and wheat. And this is also a powerful time to save for pollinating. And we're talking about the yellow flowers and pollinating due to the sun and dew and water creating fragrance. And that pollination is essential for a good fruit and nut crops, and also for beans and peas. Which probably you've sown earlier. You can get away with that outside earlier. So the month of May is full of sustainable action. after reverence and celebration in Bealtaine. Now, to ensure fertility and healthy start for summer growing and for the harvest to come, this is a time of matchmaking as well. And there's Willie Daly. I must show a picture of Willie Daly, who's the sort of, I think he may be the last active matchmaker, and very much a tourist attraction now too. And I'm actually sure that in the USA, the spring break has origins in this early May tradition. Anyway, that's going on. I was talking about nuts in May, wasn't I? The nuts in May rhyme. So let's continue with that. Well, Sinead is going with nuts in May, knots in May. Sinead is going with nuts in May. So who will go with Sinead for nuts in May? Who will go with Sinead for nuts in May? Seamus is going with nuts in May, and so it goes on, as we say. Anyway, Eileen Monahan is next up. We've got some poems from her. Give me a bit of a break from the stress of getting back on the air, and I hope some of you come back. You're kind of drifting away pretty quick. Surprise you. So here is Eileen Monahan.
Bluebell. Pretty bells of vibrant hue create a carpet of hazy blue. Come before the tree renew, catch the sunlight coming through. First we see your shiny leaves, then the flower loved by bees. Many a passer-by you please, as you grow amongst the trees. People gather you along the way, through the woods in merry May, to put in jam jars to display, and brighten up their day. Forget-me-not. Please remember forget-me-not. Sky blue flowers with yellow dot, blooming sweetly in earthly plot. Flowers cluster on hairy stem, pointed leaves look well with them. Forget-me-not, you little gem. You remind us of love we knew, friends and family who said adieu. Love will always live with you.
Well, as you can see, Eileen there's got poems on flowers. I'm going to bring a few more from Eileen a bit later on. So thanks for those of you who have stuck around. Most of you have left, which is not surprising. Here we go. Tin fire, cattle through the two fires. I'm warming up. There we go. Not got to Maeve. Did we miss out Maeve? The Maeve bit, what I was saying about the single fire. So that I went, obviously I was miming at that. If I can find the pictures to make a reference, what I was saying is when this big fire, Bealtaine has moved away. There is a story of a lusty Maeve that actually lay with people. There's a Ruth of Maeve near Tara that you may be familiar with. So it's said that, I'm going to talk about that a bit later. The other Maeve story was that she had riders that would pick up the ash from the Ushnik fire, and they would go all over Ireland. But what I was talking about, I think that's got mixed up with the Samhain, because people are not looking for lighting their fires at this time, so that's a bit of a mix-up. Anyway, I better move on, I think, because Terry was saying she loved the flower poetry, Cliff Carr, Forget Me Not, and Andrea was very good about beautiful poem. Thanks. And as I say, we got more from Eileen very soon, before this is finished. And thank you for those hanging on, as I say. And Holy Wells. I think I'll talk a little bit about Holy Wells as well, because that's such a big thing for this time. Holy Wells, as I say, the connection of Holy Wells with Bealtaine this early May time. Around Imbolc, the winter to spring transition quarter, I always tell a story or two about Lazir and relate this to the Holy Wells as well. And I'm getting tricky stuff again. Come on, computer, stay on. Anyway, to keep this simple today, I'm just going to say this is where single women would seek to get a vision of the mate that they're about to meet. And oh god, here we go. Sorry, I'll try and keep this going. Anyway, sorry. Sorry that, as I say, it's a woman going to the well to me, and I'm sorry that these are not for these days in multi-gender and same-gender variations, and I get called about that sometimes. But it would be best, I think, personally, transcribe what I'm saying yourself. There could possibly be very good writing and drama careers from transferring the folklore into that as well, maybe. Anyway, I'll continue with these stories. That I learned it was women visiting the wells for vision, especially Laziers and Bridget wells for mating visions. There's a lot more Bridget wells than there are Lazier wells. Now, the legends of the lesser-known Lazier wells and the better-known Bridget wells are similar. And the main difference is that Bridget is said to travel around Erin with cows, and Lazier would travel around Erin with some sheep. So here's my interpretation of a bit of Lazier somewhere. If I find it, let's find a bit of Lazier here. Everything's gone cockeyed. There we go. There's a bit. That's a nice artist's impression there. And one of the rituals of Bealtaine is also it's the start of the sheep shearing season. And I hope you can still hear me, those of you with me. Anyway, the visiting visions of women staring into the wells at Imbolg have now seemed to have moved forward, for this tradition is being held around the country much later, and it's been changed probably in the last 100 years ago. It's been moved from the Imbolg to maybe too cold to sit by the well there or something, but it's been changed to the eve of May the 1st, the eve of May Day. So the now women in the post-Gregory time, they're visiting the wells on the 30th of April, and unfortunately, women who leave that till the 31st, they've got a bit of a problem. But it's a tradition even overall. Very few women are now going to the wells for this purpose. But with a bit of social media prompting, like with the May bushes, probably that tradition will start up again very well. Anyway, there's a poem of this I love, and I share it with every opportunity I can. It's not one of mine. It's adopted from a Robin Williamson. Well, yeah, I adopted it from the way Robin Williamson interpreted it. He got it from William Blake, and it said that William Blake translated it from the Donegal Shanachie. And Robin calls it verses of power, so I call it Laz's Well. But it's about women's visions from a well. And so I think I'll encore my version of this. I hope you don't mind. It is quite short, and it gives me another pause to check on this computer, and I hope you enjoy this. Old women stare at her water. They do not see a face, just days that have gone by. And when young women stare at her water, they do not see a face, just some image of desire. Now, if you stare into a water expecting no reflected dream, you will see your first love, because Lazier is a lover of the flowing earth and its four dances. She says the light will always be brilliant to anyone who cherishes colour, yellow flowers. I asked her, but what if there was no heaven? She says, touch my breast and see the green fields turn into blossoms. For her songs are all of love, lifelong. Into every green and blue yonder her glass harp rings as it ripples through her rivers. Our cherished sins we let go to float away, voiceless. And when we do this, she will embrace us with blossom. She'll always forgive us and seal us with her blessing. So I say my farewell to hell and to heaven, both made in man's mind of fancy and fear. So I say my farewell to all that does not matter, that's made in a coward's heart, such as asking questions, I suppose. All that we learn is listening to the birds singing. So all that we learn is about each day that she made you. Wow, that worked okay, and I think all systems are up and running. So I'm going to stay with wells a bit longer because there's another well tradition that's fading away, but still practiced in some rural places. And that's when farmermen, they actually they go to the sacred holy wells at sunrise on the 1st of May. And some of them it's to drink in it, but for some of them it's to actually bathe in it. And this is the farmer's belief. It's an intent to cleanse themselves. And here's a man who's cleansing himself in water there. And it's believed that if men do this at this time, it increases their stamina. And maybe they do that so they don't disappoint the women of visions that have been there the time before, the night before. It's also said that men only, once upon a time, men only washed once a year anyway. And the day they washed was on 1st of May. So that's why they bathe in the well, or even find a larger pool of water. It's their once a year wash, used to be. I suppose some men, that is still the case. So that is it, into the holy well for the once a year bath. Now, another story is that they do this special bath to prepare themselves to go off mating. And if men went off mating, which is one of the traditions of May, as I've been saying, the lusty month of May, they could well become married in June. And by June, the effects of that annual bath will start to wear off, of course, especially if they're working the land and working in their gardens. And this is why it's said that the wives, the brides, walk down the aisle carrying a bouquet at their wedding. The reason they carry the bouquet is it's full of fragrant flowers to protect themselves from the groom's new odors. Anyway, going back to another traditional interpretation of men's dawn baths in the holy wells, this is said to also invigorate the men to have the stamina to do the consummation so they can breed sons and daughters that eventually grow up and help them with their work, so they hope. So I assume the men's concern with that water bathing is not only for the cleansing, but for a stamina boost at this time, because there's going to be a lot of farming work now. Once those seeds and everything's in, the farming work is going to intensify, the daylight is longer, and they need the stamina for all that to happen, as well as have wonderful times with their mate. Now, extending from that tradition of farmers, the wells at sunrise on May Day, it's also a tradition that once the farmers and the men were out of the wells, along comes the cattle. And this was a practice that stopped about 30 years or so ago. And but the cattle would then come up to the wells. It's a one day a year cattle could drink from the well in order for their stamina and for their health. And 30 years ago, this used to happen from a tiny village called Shrone City in Kerry. So there you go. The farmers would drink from there, and they would bring their cattle to drink at the well. I don't have any cattle drinking a well. This is the well at Shrone City that they drank from. It's got the stone wall in it now, but and there's an artist's impression of cattle coming up to a well and drinking from it. But farmers, of course, had the sense to use the well before the cattle came along. So one day of the year, cattle were allowed to drink from these sacred springs and wells. And anyway, before getting to the next tradition, one or two of you making some comments. I hope you're actually, such a lovely reading, someone said. Someone heard it. It's Terry Slack. Thank you for staying with us. And Andrea, thank you for staying as well, because I see from the figures we're down to less than a quarter of the people before the incident. So thank you very much. I'm going to talk about rolling in the dew. It's another tradition, very related tradition this time. A little bit on rolling the dew. During recent years, come on back, I've been hearing from some people who have actually been getting well into the tradition of doing an annual rolling in the dew on the 1st of May. And now there seems to be a development from the earlier I was showing with the posy, the wiping of the eyes with the flowers. Seems to have come from that, but people have got more enthusiastic, started rolling in the dew. So it's a kind of an extreme from the Bealtaine. It's related to cleansing, a form of baptism, without jumping in a holy well. And we are in a time, of course, when people will do anything to protect themselves and protect their health. And it's said that some of these people that rolled in the dew before dawn, they do it naked. And was it today or yesterday was gardening in the nip? I wonder if that tradition's come from there. Anyway, I don't have any pictures of that rolling in the dew. Sorry about that. But it reminds me, that rolling in the dew reminds me of how people approach holy wells with the intent of personal cleansing, healing, drinking, and collecting of the holy water. But I'm going to break today. As I say, I've got some more break from that subject because we've got some more from Eileen. Let's play that. A couple more flower poems from Eileen Moynihan here. Here we go.
Dandelion. What a magnificent fellow, with your head of golden yellow, on a tall stem that's hollow, with downy sea clock to follow. Some people call you just a weed, whilst others love and use you for all the home cures they need, and on your young leaves feed. To Mother Nature you belong, your seeds spread a sunny throng of flowers with taproots long that grow tough and strong. Brunette rose, in limestone cliff and shore, grows a rose we adore, creamy white, sometimes pink in her decor. The bumblebee loves her scent and buzzes around content, hovering for hours amongst her flowers. Purple-black hips ripen later, keeping us all feeling brighter. She might be far spikier than her kin, lower but lovelier.
Well, thank you. Only two more lovely flower poems there. And that's fantastic. It's lovely to have the flower ones. I'm going to talk about the twin fires a bit more, that tradition, because before or after drinking from the holy wells, the cattle had already been driven between the two fires. Here's a painting of that. Someone bringing cow. That would be a common sight. It's amazing how many women would have a single cow for blessing in the Hebrides. Anyway, putting it between the twin fires there. I've got something else here. There's another artist impression. Sorry. I don't know why the other fire isn't lit, but anyway, that's another artist impression of that. And this ritual is viewed as both mystical and it's also practical. It's not practiced so much now, but cattle today, they spend the winter in sheds and they're fed silage and hay feed. But all cattle used to be outside once upon a time. And this is the time at the beginning of May when they would be moved from the lowland to highland grazing at the Bealtaine time. Have I got that right? Bealtaine time? Yeah, I've got that right. They'll be going up to high. And in Clare, it's very different because what happens in Clare, it's all barren there in the Burren. And in the summer, it gets too hot for cattle. But what happens is, because of the heat, it holds through the winter and it provides grazing from the cattle. So in May, they're actually brought down from there to the grazing at the bottom. But I'll talk more about that in another episode. The practical purpose of running the cattle between the fires, apparently, it looks very sacred and mystical, but it seems the main purpose of this was to burn off insects that's been acquired. The eggs have got into them through the winter and they're starting to hatch now. So the fire is to burn the insects off the cattle. That's apparently the practical reason, is to get rid of that stuff that got lodged in their fur. But it's a cleansing ritual, isn't it? Still a cleansing ritual. So these twin fires and running the cattle through them, they've been reenacted in different ways in different places. Kennedy Castle in Offaly used to do this as a ritual every year, but they don't do it anymore. But at the Festival of Fires of Ushnick, as I say, that's a big fire, big singular fire. Mead, the centre of Ireland. And this is an event that's back. It's been off for a couple of years because of the COVID. And what you'll find there is not cattle, but a lot of horses running around and people in their various dresses and reenactment stuff on the horses. Looks very grand. They're wandering around the fire as well. So it's a celebration there at Ushnick with one fire now. But they do have I don't know if I have a picture of it. I might have a bit later. They do have the triple spirals each side of the fire as well. So they have and they set fire to the triple spirals as well. So they try and bring it all together in a very dramatic way. But even at Yushnik, it's all about cleansing. So there's cleansing with water and cleansing with fire, really. And even with infections and viruses from medieval times, from ancient times, they always dealt with by putting us through heat. And that's the first cleansing. And after we've done heat, such as in the sweat houses, stone sweat houses here, then you have water poured over you for the second cleansing. So similar thing, really. Heat, then rapid cool down with the sacred water. That's what's happening with the cattle. They go between the twin fires. There's all that heat. They get rid of the insect eggs and all the rest of it. And then they have a nice cool down by drinking from the well. Anyway, what about the May Queen? We don't really do this in Ireland very much, but the May Queen for the 1st of May. Cliff Carr will be all familiar with this one if he's still with us. And her traditions are really more for England, Wales, and parts of Scotland too. And I think I've got some more here. There's another one, artist impression. That's the younger one. But somehow the May Queen is linked. It's linked from a mating dance chant, really. Or maybe the other way around. Maybe the chant brought about the May Queen. I don't know. Anyway, but like the May Queen carrier, the May Queen is a girl who's not had children yet. So I'll bring that one back up again. You might have seen my posting on Facebook of the lovely John Otway song, which goes into a bit of mischief around that. A beautiful song, which is Josephine, the song Josephine. And it talks about the May Queen traditions and how he was a naughty boy and sort of broke that tradition on the quiet. But it's really nothing to do with physical virginity. This is all about, again, and the May Queen is a girl who's not had children yet, same as in Ireland, for the chosen girl to carry the May bush door to door. Now, the May Queen is a symbol of the bringer of the sun, of warmth, fertility, and it sort of declares the mating season, lads and lasses, is now open. And the May Queen also gives blessings on the 1st of May for the pollination to happen and for the harvest to come, the grand harvest. Now, month of May itself comes from a Greek word that I think sounds like Mea, and that's where May comes from. And Mea was the eldest of 7 nymphs of Pleiades. Now, Pleiades happens to be a star group within the constellation of Taurus. And guess what? The center, I was talking of sidereal time. When we hit the sidereal time on Thursday, on the 5th of May, that happens to be the cross-quarter point of Bealtaine. And there you go. In the sky is the constellation of Taurus, along with an imagery of the bull around it. And so that's interesting as well. That and within there is Pleiades. So it's amazing the connection of folklore around the world. So the May Queen is Mea, who's the May Queen on the 1st of May. But as I say, in Ireland, I'll talk about Maeve again, who's a favourite goddess as well for some people around the Bealtaine. And it said that 5,000 years ago, this custom goes out. How do we know? Anyway, it's I think this is a custom that was revved up during the 19th century Celtic revival age. But Tara is said to always had a priestess of Maeve. So we're talking about a goddess Tara. And it said that she had a priestess called Maeve. And when a Bealtaine chieftain was appointed, that chieftain had to lie with Maeve in the wrath of Maeve in Tara. And it's a big wrath. There's a little picture of it. It's a great henge that goes around in a circle, and that henge is full of trees, and then the rest of it is often ploughed up and used for feed and cattle feed. But that's another version of Maeve, not as a goddess this time, but actually as a kind of a queen who was appointed by Tara to lay with the chieftain to be. Anyway, this coupling was said to have secured fertility and the eventual growing and good harvest for the land of Erin and all of his people. Sort of opposite of the end of the year version of the Swan Dagda or Doider and the Morrigu and the Morrigan story of when they lay together for the winter, for the birth, for quick pregnancy and birth the following Imbolc. Anyway, after the coupling of Maeve and a chosen mate, that's another way of thing. It said the fires from Tara were then not distributed, but then lit. And that was to celebrate. So in a way, they thought that big fire, excuse me, on Yushnik, some people say that's linked to, hooray, the May Queen of Maeve has slept with the king in her wrath there. So, and because she slept with him, that we're all going to have a fantastic harvest. So Ireland does have its covert version of the May Queen through Maeve. But the Yushniklan fire always has to be the first one to be lit, by the way. Now, my own belief is that the May Fire Festival, all this stuff, the variation, is what people made up when the printing got going and people doing reenactments. They thought, oh, this is a bit of folklore that will work. So I think this comes from 19th century Celtic romance revivals, and where they took fragments of different bits of tradition and sewed them together, a bit like what the social media is doing with tradition now. But I think that's also another, in a subtle way, a reinterpretation of the tradition of driving the cattle between the twin flames. It's all focused on the celebration of the warm sun on the cold dew, cold frost, cold land, and warming the land. And this all enhances the flower fragrances, the attraction of pollen. And honestly, I think the big fires could be a waste of time and fuel. Save the fuel for someone, I say. Anyway, maypole. Let's talk a bit about the maypole. From the May Queen, we have the maypole. That actually comes from an Anglo-Saxon tradition, I think. There's a couple of comments from you that are left here. Thank you for holding on again. Let's see what you're saying at the moment. Hail the May Queen. I thought Cliff would come up with that one. Very good. Terry Slack, such a treat to hear more Eileen. My dandelion is pricked up. Very good. Well done, Terry there. Anyway, let's go on about the maypole a bit. Maypole, yeah. I love this one as well. As I say, I think it's from Hand and Go Second. We hardly see this in Ireland. It's probably going to come soon. But it's very big in the UK. So, and some say that the Romans actually brought their maypole to Britain. I think possibly that might be true because it probably got brought into their empire. They were a bit like the Borg in their day anyway. And they did soak up a lot of the Saxon traditions and what happened with the Roman Empire. It was literally built up on pooling all of the cultures and traditions that they absorbed. They didn't have their own agenda to conquer everyone with. Yes, they wanted to conquer everyone, but they wanted to acquire their cultures and the traditions and pull it all together. So I think the Romans took this Saxon tradition and probably did come through the Romans, but definitely I think started with the Saxons. And so what is a maypole? Well, it's obviously from a tree, but what tree? Some say, oh, it must be the tree of life. Celebration of the tree of life must be an oak, ash, or elm. And now, considering it's of Saxon origin, and because apples have a huge meaning in the old Germanic and Saxon regions, I'm inclined to think the maypole was an origin of a dapple trunk. And this is how I interpret it. Wassailing, that definitely comes from the Saxons, came to Britain to celebrate the apple harvest, bless the abundance of the apple crop, but more important, because it's in January, is to wake up the apple trees. Look, the winter's nearly over. Come on, let's wake up and let's get going because we rely on you for the next apple tree crop. So that wassailing west sailing it's a motivation. Look, spring is nearly here. Yeah, let's see what we can do. And that tradition has drifted into Wales, Southeast Ireland as well. Wexford does it, and also Tipperary has got into it in a big way because it's cider country, apple cider country. So what I've been told is what happens is the oldest tree in the orchard has its branches stripped because the oldest tree in the orchard is not producing many apples anyway. So the Saxons, they were very much into tree grafting, even way back in history. And what I suspect is that the cut branches of this older tree, they were grafted to crabapple roots because the Saxons could do this. They were very skilled at that. And there were branches from the old tree would then form the new young apple trees. And this was very precious because a lot of the grafting came from branches that had come along the Silk Road anyway. Now, so you've got this elder apple tree. It's had all its branches stripped. And that's, it's no purpose anymore. All the young apple trees are coming up. So it's chopped down, and that is the maypole. And here's a maypole. This is not an apple tree, but there's some lads erecting this huge maypole tree. I think it's in the USA somewhere because in northern USA, maypole is a big thing as well. And then there's the maypole dance. And I love this old picture. It's a bit vague. And that's the one of the blessing of the new trees that will be grown from the grafted branches. Anyway, I think that's all I have at the end. Sorry about the breakup, and thank you for hanging on to me. I said it would be roughly 2 hours. I'm going to tell you what's coming up as well. So hold on for that. The maypole tradition in Avery was performed at the dawn this morning. It's where I got inspiration for that May Day song. Well, thank you, Cliff, for that. That's it on that. Any other comments from the handful of you that's still here? I so appreciate you being here. As I say, let's get the that picture away so I can show you what's coming up. It's not as easy as it sounds. I'm kind of stuck. There we go. As I say there again, you probably think I don't deserve this, but there's subscriptions there, and also if I can go to if the computer will let me, and just at the last minute, it's playing up again. There we go. Then people thank you for your generosity through buying me a coffee. That seems to be more popular than the lately. That's been a popular one to keep the funds going than over at I'm brain dead at the moment. There we go. I'll take that off. Over at Patreon, as I say, it all helps cover the payments, and my expenses are actually going up now, so that's a concern. Anyway, buy me a coffee. Coming up, let's tell you what's coming up. Let's stop waffling and get the show done. We got next week, we got Ashlings and the Green Man. I think we got some lovely guests contributing to that. I got an Ashling picture to get us in the mood for that. And I will continue with a bit of so on stuff to start off that with, but we're doing the Ashlings because there's going to be that for the men, the Ashlings. Then we're going to have the Green Man for the women. And it's folklore, very intense desires, which is traditional for me anyway. And how these desires are unexpectedly revealed to us. Fascinating subject. I hope you'll enjoy that. And then when the hawthorn's out here, even though it is in the Netherlands, it's the fairy stories for May. There's hawthorn in bloom at Tara. So I do go into the lusty and romantic hawthorn folklore at that time. And that'll be the end of the Samhain series. And then we move on to a water series. And we'll have the women and water again. That was lovely, the contributions from women about their inspiration from water. So any women who'd like to add to that, they'll be included in the show. Please get them to me. I'll be exploring reverences reverences to water, the women who are keepers and protectors and campaigners, about the precious ancient gifts of water from nature that keeps flowing and keeps us going. And then we've got Sarah Humble back on the 29th and other people when we're subject is the caring of the sacred wells. Someone's putting a Bridget Cross in there. Excuse me. And Sarah Humble will have our keepers, protectors, and campaigners as well of these wells. And we'll talk about the protection of lochs and rivers as well. So I think from you here, before the computer finally blows up on me, which is trying so hard to do in the last minute. Let's see what you're saying. Fantastic show. Thank you, Cliff, for all that and playing the song. Jane, thanks to you for hanging on. Lovely to hear you talk about these traditions. Does Whitsun have anything to do with Bealtaine? Let me talk about that one when the Hawthorns come out in 2 Sundays' time. I'll keep that a go. Always a lovely episode. I enjoy how you rise to the problems. Boy, I think this was the worst ever to have a complete shutdown today. But luckily, we do have bells and whistles. It tells me in advance it's about to happen. But of course, I was saying, no, go away. Let's see. Right, I think it's time for me to go. So thank you very much, everybody, for all that. Amazing guests, Cliff Carr and Eileen Monaghan in video there. Right, goodness me. If you're watching this as a archive broadcast, thank you for getting through the troubles in the middle. Please keep commenting here, and I do return from time to time to give the answers. There's bells of the YouTube. Will tell you what's coming up next week as a reminder. So I'll wish you to have a safe week full of inspirations, enchantments, lots of wonderful visions, and really that is it from me. I better get going. So play well next Sunday. Enjoy the May Day. Enjoy this 1 month, especially this week. That's all for me now. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for holding on.